So we are building a large version of the 555 timer IC. Let's go ahead and get it opened up here. Check out the instructions on the back here real quick. This is from Evil Mad Scientist. And not a whole lot on the instructions. Just some pretty basic information there. Let's go ahead and get the box opened up. And here we've got the circuit board. And there we've got some transistors. And some thumb screws. And these are the legs for the circuit chip. Let's go ahead and grab out the Harbor Freight scissors and get this thing chopped open. And this is a pretty thick and hefty circuit board. Yeah, definitely great quality here. Shout out for that. Let's take a look at this here. Here we've got the resistors, at least the varied value ones. There is a pack of 4.7K resistors, 7 of those. Right here are those. And then we've got all of the transistors, the 3906s and the 3904s. And the legs for the IC. And let's get started. So these are through-hole components, so we're going to slide them through first, get them in place, and then go ahead and apply solder. Some of these can be a little tricky to get pushed through if you get the wire bent incorrectly starting out. That also helps hold them in, though, when they don't go in as easy. It helps hold them in place. And let's get to soldering. You'll see partially way through the video we do change soldering iron tips. The one that I'm using at the beginning here, it pretty much burns up to nothing. So if you know where to get good soldering iron tips for a 907 Hakko soldering iron, let me know. And go ahead and try some larger solder here, and it's poor quality. As you can see, it left little legs hanging out there. Still looks good on the other side. And we'll go ahead and apply some solder here. It's a little bit tougher to use the smaller solder. It's definitely not near as rigid. And we'll clip those off. And snip that one off as well. Here's the iron tip after about an hour of use. And that's what a good iron tip looks like after several hours of use. Let's go ahead and get these resistors soldered into place here. Snip those off. Gonna speed this up just a little bit so it doesn't take quite as long to get through this process here, but we're gonna just be placing these resistors through, soldering them, and then snipping off the excess wire. And it also helps if you bend the wire once you get it through the circuit board. It helps hold the resistor in place so that it doesn't fall off the surface of the circuit board when you flip it upside down. Otherwise, the components are not going to be against the surface and it's going to look tacky. And there we go. You can already see the tip is starting to have some issues. I also turned the temperature down during this just so the tip wouldn't be hot for so long, and it still burned up. And you can definitely see the tip is starting to get eaten away there. Solder not going on quite as easy with that tip. Snip those off and continue on. And you can bend the wire either way through the circuit board, as long as you have a pair of snips that are like surface snips. That way you can snip it off right at the surface there. You can see we're even catching some of the solder in the snip there. We're getting so close to the board. Flip it over, we're getting there. And now we're having trouble even getting the solder to melt with that poor tip. Few more resistors left and then we'll be on to the transistors. Still getting some good solder joints, but definitely losing quality in that tip there as we go. See, those solder joints look definitely nice on the other side, even though the tip quality is going down. And these are the 3904 transistors. And the 3906 transistors. And here we are, we're going to start soldering the transistors on. The angle to get the solder in here is not as easy either. These transistors are fairly close together and they each have three contacts, so it's a little bit more difficult to get the solder in there. I'm also placing several transistors through the board at a time. It would take a lot longer if we just place one through and then solder it and then flip the board, place one more. So I'm trying to put 4 or 5, depending on which components they are and the location, 4 to 5 or so in there. And you can see the board's getting a little bit of residue from the solder. We will go ahead and clean that all up at the end and get it looking spiffy. And this is going a little bit easier here at the bigger tip, but the bigger tip makes it a little bit more difficult. You can see these are placed much closer together, so it's a little bit more difficult. When we are all finished, we have the equivalent of 25 transistors, 2 diodes, and 15 resistors, which are normally all compacted into a tiny little circuit chip. And this is 6040 rosin core solder by MG Chemicals. First introduced in 1971, the 555 timer chip remains in widespread use today. Let's go ahead and knock this row out real quick here. You can see we have plenty of heat with this larger tip. Onto our last row. And we are getting near the end here. Just have a couple transistors left. And now we're going to go ahead and snip all these off. We haven't snipped any of the transistors off yet, so we're going to go ahead and snip all these off. And these feel like they want to fling everywhere, so I've got to hold my finger on top of these ones. Put some 99% isopropyl on a Q-tip and go ahead and scrub the board up here. Scrub-a-dub-dub. Get the rest of the flux off the board. Make this look nice. And there we go. It is completed. All the components are soldered on. All we've got left is to screw the legs on and screw in the thumb screws. And we're just going to go ahead and put the black screw through, put the plastic washer on the bottom, and then we're going to screw it into the aluminum legs. We basically have to create the threads for the black screw when we screw it in, so they do screw in a little bit difficult. And we'll do the same with the other side. This is a Fantasticar precision screwdriver, in case you were wondering. Go ahead and place these thumb screws in here. And there you have it. Exploded view of a 1970s circuit chip, and fully functional.